Delhi's new Moti Bagh neighborhood symbolizes the pinnacle of the perks, power and opportunity that come with working in the elite all India government services. For lakhs of aspirants each year, to be in the civil services is a deeply coveted ambition that very few actually achieve. So the government's announcement that 10 people can make a sideways or lateral entry into this elite community without having to go through that highly competitive entrance exam cum selection process has made a big splash. Talented and motivated Indian nationals have been invited to apply for 10 joint secretary level posts across ministries. On the face of it, it sounds like a really good idea, but I'm curious about how it will play out and what impact it will have in the long term on the design and structure of the bureaucracy. On Off Center today, I'm talking to Amitabh Kant, the CEO of the Niti Aayog that's been championing this disruptive idea. Mr. Kant, thank you so much for talking to us. This is something that you have been evangelizing. Is this based specifically on your experience at the Niti Aayog in the past few years, or is this something that you have in mind given how you've seen the service as a career bureaucrat?
Well, it's not a new idea. When
Sure.
I joined government, there were a number of people. Actually, I'd worked with Mr. Monte Kaluwale and Commerce Ministry earlier. Prior to that, Mr. Krishnamurthy, Mr. D.V. Kapoor, later Mr. Shahi, Mr. Rakesh Mohan, many people came in, and they were all lateral inductions into government, and many of them have done extremely well in government. So the idea is not new.
Conceptually, it's not new, but operationally, the way this plays out, how is this different from past experience?
They were selecting individuals, some outstanding individuals as secretaries to the government.
Right.
And even this government has, if you look at the case of water resources, Mr. Parmeshwaran Iyer actually is a lateral induction into the government, and so is Indu Bhushan, who's come to head the National Health Authority. They're both lateral inductions into the government. They're not a part of the UPSC selection process right now. They were in the IS, they had left and gone away. So but this is the first time 10 people are being selected as a group to come in at the middle level, that is at the policy making level of joint secretary. And I'm a believer that the government constantly needs fresh ideas, it needs a lot of more energy, it needs a lot of more vibrancy, and it's good to combine the field experience of UPSC entrants who've gone and worked in the field. They've been through all the trials and tribulation, all the challenges. They have the experience of delivering things, and UPSC does a very good job of selecting on merit. So you have about, in about 450 posts of joint secretaries. Actually, the IS officers are about 200 odd.
Right.
The rest come from many services.
The other services.
Other services. They come in from forest service, they come in from police, they come in from many other services. So if 10 people out of that come from, the academic world or the research world or from the private sector, they'll bring in a lot of good talent.
Specifically at the Niti Aayog, you've interacted with many different ministries and you've been at the forefront of this Digital India and that initiative, amongst others. What are the areas where you've seen that the government is lacking skills and expertise in the new industries, new technologies?
So, when I came to Niti Aayog, and Niti Aayog was fortunately a new body, I brought in a lot of people from outside. Actually, Niti Aayog is flushed with people. Very bright and brilliant young people from outside. They've generated a tremendous amount of energy. We've had to do a lot of hand-holding with them. Our advisors have worked very closely with them. But it's, the basic difference between Planning Commission and Niti Aayog has been that Niti Aayog has had a vibrant set of young individuals who've brought in a huge amount of energy and dynamism. And I think that's what the government of India needs, because there's so much of disruption happening across the world. Areas of artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, there's so much happening. If our ambition is to grow at 9 to 10%, our ability to have the best intellectual talent from across the world to work for the government is very critical. We need to make giant leap forwards, not merely in areas of manufacturing, but in the social sector.
What are the areas specifically that you have felt that the government needs expertise?
I think we need a lot of expertise on nutrition, we need a lot of expertise to break grounds on education, we need also on health, we need a lot of new ideas in the sector.
I find it interesting you say that, because the past examples of lateral inductions, even at the secretary level and at the highest individual levels, have been in the economic services, isn't it? And you're saying there's much more
so
beyond that.
my personal belief is that it's impossible for India to grow at rapid rates without a radical transformation in the social sector. One of the key things that we are doing is to work on the 115 aspirational districts.
Yes.
I mean, why do these districts remain backwards? I mean, they remain backwards, so we call them aspirational. It's simply because we've not been able to make major breakthroughs in education, health, and nutrition on ground.
Right.
So we need expertise all round, and we definitely need expertise in very emerging areas of growth. I mean, we need expertise in biotechnology, we need expertise in artificial intelligence, we need expertise in a whole range of new areas of manufacturing.
Digital India, the whole initiative that you've helped spearhead.
Essentially, this scheme would be successful if IAS officers work with these new inductees. The secretaries must handhold them, must provide all support. They must go through a process of training for a couple of months at the Masuri Academy. And, working in government is extremely complex. It's very complicated. It's very difficult to get a thing done. The nitty-gritty of transforming things within government is extremely complex. And if you want these young people to deliver, it would require a lot of support mechanism. It would require a lot of hand-holding.
But this support mechanism, this hand-holding, is predicated on the fact that the IAS officers, that the entire association buy into this idea.
Yeah.
And from what I'm getting to hear, it's not something that people are welcoming with open arms, let me put it like that. Also because a lot of the conversation has been based around the fact that, these bureaucrats, they are stuck, they don't have the expertise, they are generalists, what do you know? And you're a career bureaucrat. You are who you are because you started your career in 1980, I think, in the IAS. So the question is, if I'm an IAS officer, you're not making me feel good about who I am, but you want me to welcome this idea and make it work.
No, the key thing about the Indian Administrative Service is that when you selected through the UPSC, you go and work in the field. You are an SDM, you are a collector, you are a commissioner, you are really working on ground at the field level in your state. So when you come to the center, you're really on deputation. You come from the state cadre on deputation to the center. And therefore, what the IAS must feel happy about it, that they get an opportunity to transform India on ground, which no other service gets. And that is its primary task. When it comes on deputation to Government of India, it should allow many other people, especially those with great intellectual background, to come and interact with it and see how best we can work together as a team to drive India.
But so how do you get that buy-in? How do you get people to appreciate the idea and help make it work? Because it's finally in the hands of the bosses of these joint secretaries, as you go along.
Well, I think a lot of very rational, sensible IAS officers realize that it's a good move, it's a good initiative to allow many fresh ideas.
One of the concerns or fears within the IAS and even outside, within the services and even outside, is the selection process. Now, the advertisement for these 10 posts doesn't really specify who, what about the selection process, and the qualifications seem to be quite regular. So a minimum age qualification of 40, 15 years of work experience, degree from a university, specialization will help. That doesn't really seem like the brightest talent from the world is being invited. And it says it's then left to the discretion of the selection committee. You've been talking about the fact that this selection process has to be transparent, and isn't that one of the biggest concerns, that if it's not transparent, you have political appointments, you have, and then, a committed bureaucracy of some sort.
Yeah. So, the key thing is that the government has come out with an advertisement. I mean, it's invited a lot of people from outside to apply. And I'm really delighted that the ad is not too rigid. It's very flexible. And the good thing is that it will allow people with varied background, with different kind of qualifications to apply to work for Government of India. But the key thing is to do it in an extremely professional, extremely transparent, and extremely objective manner.
So should it be done by the UPSC?
And the selection must be totally merit-based.
Right.
Now, whether to do it through UPSC, the process, it's important that the DOPT takes a call on this, but essentially,
what would your advice be?
My suggestion is that you can have a selection committee, but you can co-opt a couple of UPSC members on board of that selection committee, so that the key thing is that we should, at the end of the day, bring in such meritorious people from across the world. I mean, as the government has done with both Param Iyer and Indu Bhushan, attract the best talent from across the world to add value to governance in India. There should be no mediocrity in this. I mean, there must be the best and the brightest minds in the world. And Government of India, lots of people are extremely keen to work for Government.
So you're saying the selection process has to be completely foolproof and above board.
Absolutely.
Mr. Kant, I want you to address some of the other concerns that have been raised. The other concern is conflict of interest. And conflict of interest not just about private sector or corporate, individuals with a corporate past coming into government, and therefore their ability to interact and interface and influence their past employers and sectors, but it's also about when they go back. I'm sure they'll be very valuable to their employers and to the private sector, isn't it? So what are the safeguards? How do you prevent this conflict of interest?
So, I support this move. One of the key things I've been saying is that the government also must allow its government servants to move out. If they perform well, you give the freedom and the flexibility to the private sector to also select them so that they can go out and work for a period of 3 to 5 years in the private sector. There's a lot happening in the private sector which they can learn and come back to the government. Now, the issue about conflict of interest, to my mind, is overblown. We've had examples of Mr. Shahi, who was actually working in the BSCS. He was chairman of BSCS. He came in, later became the secretary of Ministry of Power. But there is no conflict of interest. To my mind, he took a conscious call that he wouldn't be dealing with issues relating to that particular company. And I'm quite sure that people who are selected will look at a much broader, much larger perspective. The canvas will be India and not the canvas of an individual company. And I think we should put a boundary wall there. That boundary wall should be that particular company with which we have dealt with, we're not going to deal with issues relating to that.
But what about after? Because that's also where, that is also where a lot of people, that's another tricky area where bureaucrats leave the service and then work with the largest companies in this country.
So the challenge there is to ensure that people coming in from a particular company shouldn't be dealing with that and shouldn't be actually after taking policy decisions, shouldn't be going back to a particular company on the basis of which their decisions have had an impact on the.
But is it possible to create safeguards into the service contract?
I think this bit about conflict of interest is quite overblown, because people getting in at the level of joint secretary and secretary will have a very clear conscience. They'll be selected on quite a bit on their integrity as well, and therefore they will have a very clear conscience in their mind that they shouldn't do anything which will have an adverse impact. The challenge here is to select the best and the brightest people, but also select people with great vision, great integrity, so that we are able to institutionalize a mechanism like this.
Mr. Kant, the other thing that people have been saying is that in fact, even at the Niti Aayog, you have hired people from the outside as consultants. Why is it that we can't continue with that practice here? Why is it that they need to become joint secretaries with that designation and be treated as civil servants? Why not keep them as advisors and consultants, which is what you've done at Niti Aayog?
Yeah, so what happens with a consultant is that he's not a very integral part of the decision-making process. I mean, you can take a consultant's input, dump it. You can take a consultant input, take it or just not take his advice. But when you take a joint secretary, you are really in the key policy-making authority. I mean, you are driving the government. You're really taking the final call on behalf of the government and really advising your secretary and the minister on which way you want the government to go. I mean,
So it's a very
yours
critical
that's
role.
number one. And number two is you have a lot of financial authority, which is not vested with the consultant or the advisor.
So, Mr. Kant, this is seen as the start of some kind of reforms in the bureaucracy, in the administrative services, and the Administrative Reforms Commission, I think, has also indicated that this is a good idea, in its report. No, but the question is that the Modi government was expected when it came in 2014 to be quite bold in making some of these reforms. So, and why is this happening at this point? The timing of it, will it be effective coming in so late?
Well, the government has done many things. This is
Sure.
one amongst the many
Yeah.
measures. It introduced the 360-degree perspective. It has introduced outcome-based monitoring. It has moved away from financial and physical inputs, monitoring to the Prime Minister himself does a digital monitoring of implementation of schemes through the Pragati. So many things have happened, and I think a vast number of structural reforms, as you are aware, GST, direct benefit transfer, insolvency and bankruptcy code,
Sure.
RERA. Many of these are very far-reaching implications, and actually one of the key things of these structural reforms, actually, to my mind, is that in India we'll see the end of crony capitalism for once with bankruptcy and insolvency code, etc. So, this bit about lateral entry is one amongst the many measures that have been taken. I wish it had happened in the first year of this government, but nevertheless, it's a good move. And I think we should be able to do it quickly and move forward with it.
Do you see this as just like a small starting step? Do you see this getting extended? So 10 joint secretaries. Do you see these 10 joint secretaries to, sort of outsourced, if I can use that term, in perpetuity? Do you see this number increase proportionately? How do you see this play out?
These people are not, getting embedded in the government. They're coming in on a contractual basis.
3 years, maybe
3
5
years to be extended to a period of 5 years. They're contractual appointments. And
Right.
therefore, the government also needs people who, many of us having worked for many years, and including me, we become, you work for 30 years, you become an agent of status quo. You need somebody to
Do
keep.
you agree with all that as a guy who sort of, symbolizes the dynamic IAS officer who's still going strong post-retirement?
No,
I really want you to answer that.
No, many of us, I'm saying that including me, quite often, because you've been a very integral part of the system. You need somebody to keep coming.
Shake it up.
Keep coming and coming out with a lot of fresh ideas, pushing things hard. And it's not a bad idea to get 10 people to push government hard enough. And so my view is that while you're taking 10 people at the joint secretary level, you need to take many more
At the lower level,
at the
isn't it?
director
Yeah,
level. Actually, there's a huge number of vacancy, and for a very long time, the recruitment levels were very low. So, you just don't have deputy secretary directors in Government of India. It's impossible to get a director. And it's impossible to get an IAS director in the Government of India. There's a demand from 20 ministries will have one deputy secretary director. So, you need to bring in about 50 to 60 young directors from the market and really outstanding people. The contribution at the directors level will be far more significant, I think.
And do you see all of these efforts? I know this is the starting point, but if it goes in the direction that you seem to be recommending and suggesting, do you see a fundamental change in the organization of India's bureaucracy? Will it become more like the American way, where there is this mix of the career bureaucrat and the professional from outside, and especially at the highest levels? And is that good for a country like India? I think there is a fundamental paradigm shift in mindset and approach here, isn't it?
No, so Anuradha, my view is that the UPSC does a brilliant job. It selects the best and the brightest. I mean, that's a system which is truly outstanding, and it's been there for a very long time. And it selects the process is very merit-based. So, and these are people who go and work in the field, and your learning experience is so immense. It's not easy to work in subdivisions. It's not easy to work in the district with the political system. You have a lot of trials and tribulations. So the people come in with huge amount of experience, and that's a very, very rich experience. you need to merge and combine, you need to converge the two experiences.
Mr. Kant, do you see things like this change the way the IAS and the services function, which is where, you know, people, you may have domain expertise, but you are actually not assigned to a ministry which is in sync with your expertise. You know, promotions are really quite quick, so you don't get to really sink in and spend long years in a particular specialized ministry. So I'm saying, do you see the way the bureaucracy has been functioning all this while? Do you see that also getting changed?
So Anuradha, the world outside is really tough. Huh? If you work in the state government, the chances, if you've specialized in a particular area, the chances of your landing up in that area is very, very difficult. You know, I mean, but the right thing for governments across India, I mean, central government is one bit, but IAS officer spends a substantial part of his career in the state, and therefore it's very
like
important.
You did in Kerala,
so, in Kerala.
Yeah.
So I worked for many years.
Yeah.
It's very important that IAS officers are allowed to specialize after they've finished their district. They should be made specialists in their areas, and it'll be a wonderful combination of field experience and specialization in a particular field, which many of us are not allowed to do in the state level. And that specialization should really continue in the center. So the specialization of the field level, the central government must benefit in terms of policy making from that expertise and that knowledge. That should really happen. And I think that would be the wonderful change which should come in.
What words of advice to the 10 people who do finally get selected? We believe applications, entries close in July, end of July, and then the selection process. I'm guessing 2-3 months before we have an outcome to this. But what words of advice so that they not just survive, but thrive in the,
Grow and prosper.
Indian bureaucracy?
Well, you know, government is extremely complex. It's very, very tough. But I think the important thing is that they must make themselves at home, and it's important that their secretaries must make them a part of their team, and they, irrespective
so
of
their success depends more on their bosses and their ecosystem rather than what they do to fit in?
No, so everywhere it's important how you create that ecosystem. It's very important that you work in very close partnership with your secretary. It's very important that you are able to create a good team around you, and it's very important that you win the hearts and minds of the other joint secretaries there, and you become a very integral part of the team that is driving change.
Mr. Kant, thank you very much. Wish you a lot of good luck. Thank you.